Alright, in this video I'm going to show you how to bring in something that's a little bit more interesting than a cube and work with it inside of Blender. So first let's move out of the camera view just by pressing 0 there. And you notice we have our 3 cubes and they're all in this main collection called collection, which is nice. It's a way to easily organize 3D assets inside of Blender and other objects that are in the Blender file. I'm going to make a new collection by clicking on the main scene collection and choosing new collection there, and that makes a collection called collection 2, and I'm going to name this after the 3D asset that we're going to be importing. I'll just call it coin, and I just edited that just like you would normally by double clicking on it and renamed it. Now with the coin collection selected, I'm going to go to File, Import, and GLTF 2.0, which is a GLB or GLTF file. It's a very common file format to import. Another very common file format to import is an FBX file. And these two formats are great because they ordinarily have all of the textures baked into the file without needing to import a lot of different files. So I highly recommend working with these two formats. DAE is also very good, although a little bit less common. So I'm going to bring in a GLTF file now, and making sure that the coin collection is selected. Click on that, and let me go and bring in this animated coin right here. And so this will import an animated coin here. And this is a good time to talk about different render modes inside of Blender. So if I press this play button here, it'll start playing the animation of the spinning coin. If I press pause, it stops at the frame, and we notice that there are 250 frames there, but only 120 frames of the animation. So I'm just going to fix that real quick before we talk about rendering, and I just changed that to 120. So now the animation will stop at 120 and restart. So here's our animated coin, and it's going to restart. I'm just going to press pause there and bring it back to frame 0. And we'll look up here at these different render modes, and they start all the way at the left there of a wireframe of the object, going to a solid view here. Oops, I clicked the wrong one. This is the solid view. To a viewport shading mode, which uses Blender's very simple Eevee rendering engine, down to a scene rendered mode, which will use the lighting and cameras in our scene. And if you notice, the cameras in our scene, the lighting in our scene isn't really set up. It's not very bright, which is why we don't have as much of a shine on the coin anymore. But I can click this drop down arrow there, which will pop up a lot more options. It's the one tricky thing about Blender is that there are a lot of things to clean up the UI. They hit a lot of things under drop down menus, and you just have to check the drop down menus to see what's under there. So you notice, like, depending on what mode I have selected, clicking that drop down arrow shows either a little things or a little bit of things or a lot of things. Like in the solid mode, rendering, I can use different types of lighting, whether it's the studio or MatCap mode, which lets you pick from different things. Like if I wanted to look at things in like red clay, I can do that in solid mode, and a lot of people tend to do that while modeling because it's easier to visualize things. So that's a pretty nice feature of Blender, but we're not going to really get into it right now. What I wanted to show you is that we can disable the influence of the scene lights here and the scene world, and use one of the pre-rendered world environments to look at things in a high quality rendered mode. And the other thing that you might want to do is switch this render engine down in the details panel here. If you click on the rendering settings here, from Eevee to cycles, and if we look at things in cycles, we'll want to turn our maximum samples way down from 1024 in the viewport to a number like 16, and we'll want to turn our max cycles down from 4096 in the rendering to 64, just so that we can get a pretty quick render out. And now you notice when I zoom in, it's really working hard to re-render every time I move the camera. And yeah, so if we wanted to get a rendering of this coin right now, what we would do, and I might need to set up scene lighting to get this to work correctly. But what we would do is we would go into our camera mode and notice that our camera was positioned right at that cube originally, which is no good. That's not what we want. We want the camera to be positioned, the scene camera, to be positioned on the coin. So what I like to do for this is I like to get the viewport almost exactly like I want it to look, and it's helpful if you close this panel because that will help us center the viewport. So I'm going to press the N key, and so I'm positioning the camera like so, and then if you click view and align view and align active camera to view, it will move the camera in the scene to the viewport camera. And now we have it almost nicely positioned around our coin. So the way that you get it really greatly, really spot on positioned is you grab the border of the camera, now it's white, and you notice that my camera is selected here, press the G key and start moving the mouse until that coin is in the center of the view. And then to zoom in, you can click the camera icon here and change the focal length of the lens. So just dragging that in, zooms in, dragging that to the right, zooms it in. 100 millimeter lens seems to be what we want here. And now if I render this image, I will be able to get a high quality render, but of course I don't have great lighting yet for the coin. So the easiest way to get really great lighting for the coin and for this scene is to use an HDRI file. So in the next video, I'm going to show you how to bring in an HDRI file and get a really great lighting for the scene.